Good evening, dreamer, and welcome back to Dreamy Science Stories, where curiosity softens and science learns to breathe. Tonight, you don't need to imagine rain. There is no storm, no falling drops, and yet the forest is wet. Mist drifts slowly between the trees, hovering like a quiet thought not yet spoken. Soft light filters through layers of leaves, breaking into gentle fragments, as if the sun itself has learned to move more slowly here. This forest is breathing water, not just receiving it from the sky, but creating it, holding it, and releasing it again, in a rhythm older than memory. Water does not only fall from clouds. In forests like this, water is born from air, caught by leaves, guided by invisible pathways, and shared through roots and soil before returning upward once more. Tonight, we'll follow a single, invisible droplet, so small it can rest on the surface of a leaf, so subtle it can slip between molecules of air, and yet so powerful it can help shape climates, cool continents, and sustain entire living worlds. If these quiet journeys help you unwind, you're warmly invited to like or subscribe so more dreamers can find their way here too. Now, let your breathing slow. The forest is ready. The air in a forest is never truly dry, even on days when the sky holds no clouds. When the sun shines without hesitation, the forest carries a quiet, persistent moisture, a softness that rests against the skin and settles in the breath. This dampness does not arrive suddenly. It is not announced by rain. It is always there, lingering, patient, unseen. Inside forest air, water exists long before it becomes visible. Not as droplets, not as mist, but as countless invisible molecules, moving gently among oxygen and nitrogen, forming a thin suspended ocean too subtle to notice. In open fields, wind moves freely, sweeping moisture away before it can gather. But in the forest, movement slows. Trunks, branches, and leaves interrupt the flow of air, breaking strong currents into soft, wandering eddies. Each pause allows water molecules to linger a little longer, to meet, to hover, to begin their quiet attraction to one another. This is why forests feel different the moment you step inside. Humidity rises, sometimes by tens of %, without a single drop falling from the sky. The air itself becomes heavier, not with weight, but with presence. Leaves play a crucial role in this stillness. Their broad surfaces slow the passing wind, reducing evaporation, giving moisture time to remain. Around each leaf, a thin boundary layer of air forms, a delicate cushion where water vapor collects and waits. Millions of these tiny pockets overlap, creating a shared atmosphere that belongs to the forest alone. This is how a forest builds its own microclimate, not imposed from above, but grown from within. Beneath the canopy, temperature softens. Air cools slightly, encouraging water vapor to condense more easily. Even without clouds overhead, mist can appear at dawn or dusk, born from nothing more than cooling air and patient stillness. Fog does not always need rain. In many forests, especially at higher elevations, fog is the primary source of water. Moist air drifts in from afar, rising slowly as it meets the trees. As it cools, water condenses into microscopic droplets, suspended between branches like a slow, drifting thought. To the forest, this fog is not decoration. It is nourishment. Tiny droplets settle onto leaves, bark, moss, and soil. Some slide downwards, others cling in place, and many never fall at all, absorbed directly into surfaces designed to receive them. At the smallest scales, air behaves less like empty space and more like a crowded sea. Water exists here in nano-sized clusters, too small to feel, too light to see, yet abundant enough to sustain entire ecosystems. The forest knows how to hold them. Compared to cities, forest air moves differently. Urban landscapes accelerate wind through straight corridors, heat surfaces that drive moisture upward and away, and replace living textures with hard, dry plains. Moisture leaves quickly, unable to settle or return. In the forest, nothing urges water to hurry. Instead, it is welcomed into layers. Above the canopy, air may be warm and dry. Below it, humidity rises steadily, forming stacked atmospheres that rarely mix completely. Each layer carries its own temperature, its own moisture, its own rhythm. As night approaches, the forest grows wetter. Without sunlight, leaves cool. Cooler surfaces encourage condensation. Water vapor that drifted invisibly all day now finds a place to rest. Droplets form silently, clinging to edges, veins, and tips. By morning, everything glistens, even though the sky remained clear. This nightly cycle is so reliable that many plants depend on it entirely. They drink from the air itself, absorbing moisture directly through leaves and bark. Some mosses and lichens awaken only when fog arrives, expanding, breathing, and feeding before returning to stillness when the air dries again. The forest canopy acts like a vast vapor trap. It slows air, shades heat, and provides surfaces for water to gather. Each branch becomes a resting place, each leaf a landing platform. Together, they hold moisture in suspension, preventing it from escaping too quickly back into open sky. This is why forests feel alive even in silence, why footsteps seem softer, why sound travels differently, why breath deepens without instruction. You are walking through a diluted ocean, not liquid but airborne, not crashing but hovering. A sea made of breath and light and invisible droplets, held together by patience and form. In this place, water is not an event, it is a condition. It exists before clouds gather, before rain begins, before anyone notices. And from this quiet abundance, from this invisible moisture suspended in air, the rest of the forest water journey will begin. Slowly, gently, one unseen droplet at a time. And yet, this gentle abundance of moisture is fragile. Step just a short distance away from the forest's edge, and the air begins to change. The ground hardens, surfaces flatten, wind straightens its path and accelerates, pulling warmth and water away before they can linger. In open spaces and cities, air is encouraged to move quickly and forget. Heat rises from stone and concrete, pushing water vapor upward and dispersing it into the sky. There are fewer places for moisture to rest, fewer textures to slow it down, fewer moments of pause. But within the forest, forgetting is difficult. Every surface invites contact. Rough bark, layered leaves, soft moss, branching veins. All of them interrupt motion. All of them offer shelter to wandering molecules of water. Nothing is smooth enough to let air rush past untouched. Because of this, humidity does not merely pass through the forest. It circulates. It loops back on itself. It accumulates gently, like breath in a closed room where no one is in a hurry. Even when the sun stands high, even when clouds refuse to gather, water remains close, invisible, yet present, waiting. As evening approaches, this waiting becomes transformation. Air cools by degrees too small to notice consciously, but the molecules know. Water vapor slows, drawn towards surfaces that have grown just slightly colder. At first, nothing seems to happen. Then, at a scale smaller than sight, water begins to gather. Clusters form, edges attract. The threshold is crossed without sound. Sometime between dusk and night, the invisible becomes barely visible. A thin sheen appears along leaf margins. A soft shimmer settles onto bark and stone. The forest does not announce this moment. It simply accepts it. By morning, everything is damp, not soaked, not dripping, just alive with moisture. This is water that did not fall. Water that was already here, hidden in the air, waiting for the right stillness to reveal itself. And now, at last, our invisible droplet has found a place to rest. It hovers near a leaf, drawn by cooler temperature, by texture, by forces too gentle to feel but too persistent to resist. It slows, it settles, balanced between air and surface, between motion and pause. The droplet waits on the edge of becoming something more. In the next quiet moment, it will meet the leaf itself, not as rain, not as runoff, but as a delicate exchange between air, water, and living surface. And from that meeting, an even smaller world will begin to unfold. The droplet does not fall. It hesitates. Suspended between air and leaf, it drifts closer, drawn not by gravity alone, but by something far more delicate, the quiet invitation of a living surface. From a distance, a leaf appears smooth, simple, flat and green, a passive sheet waiting for light. But as the droplet approaches, that illusion begins to dissolve. At scales smaller than sight, the leaf is anything but smooth. Its surface rises and falls in microscopic landscapes, ridges and valleys shaped not by chance, but by millions of years of quiet refinement. This is not skin, it is technology. The outermost layer of a leaf, its cuticle, is coated in an ultra-thin film of wax. Not the wax of candles or polish, but a complex arrangement of nano-sized crystals, each one angled, shaped, and spaced to influence how water behaves the moment it arrives. Some leaves welcome water, others gently refuse it. On certain surfaces, the droplet spreads, flattening slightly, clinging with a soft insistence. On others, it gathers itself tightly, rounding into a bead, ready to roll away at the slightest tilt. This difference is not random, it is encoded in structure. Leaves from rainforests, where moisture is constant and precious, often guide water inward. Their nano-wax patterns encourage droplets to pause, to linger long enough for absorption or to flow slowly towards veins and stems. By contrast, the famous lotus leaf, growing in bright open wetlands, pushes water away with elegance. Its surface is covered in densely packed nanopillars, each one capped with wax, creating tiny pockets of air beneath the droplet. Water barely touches the leaf at all. It hovers, then rolls away, carrying dust and debris with it. This is the lotus effect, cleanliness through refusal. But deep in shaded forests, where every molecule of moisture matters, leaves tend to behave differently. They do not rush to shed water. They negotiate with it. The droplet now senses this negotiation. As it touches the leaf, it does not collapse, nor does it flee. Instead, it is gently reshaped. Invisible ridges, far smaller than a human hair, direct its movement. The droplet stretches, pulls itself along preferred paths, guided by channels etched at the nanoscale. These ridges are not straight. They curve and branch, mirroring the internal veins beneath the surface. What looks like randomness is in fact choreography. The droplet is being guided toward edges, toward veins, toward places where it can do the most good. Even the age of the leaf matters. Young leaves often carry softer, more flexible wax layers. Their surfaces absorb water more readily, supporting growth, expansion, and vulnerability. Older leaves, having endured sun, wind, and countless nights of condensation, develop thicker, more structured coatings. They become selective, choosing when to accept water and when to send it onward. Seasons leave their signatures as well. In dry periods, some plants subtly alter their surface chemistry, increasing water repellency to prevent loss. In wetter months, the same species may soften their wax patterns, allowing more intimate contact with moisture. The leaf is not static. It responds. And it is never alone. Living across this nano-landscape is an entire unseen community. Bacteria, fungi, and microscopic algae inhabit the waxy terrain, nestled into grooves too small for predators to reach. They feed on trace nutrients, exchange signals, and sometimes even modify the surface itself. To them, the arrival of a droplet is an event. Water awakens dormant cells, allows nutrients to dissolve and move, and briefly transforms the leaf surface into a liquid world. For a moment, life flows freely. Then the water moves on. And this movement is purposeful. Water resting on a leaf is not excess. It is not waste. It is a pause in a longer journey. Some of it evaporates, cooling the leaf and the air around it. Some seeps inward through microscopic openings, not the well-known stomata, but subtle imperfections in the cuticle itself. Some flows toward the stem, joining other droplets in slow, silent streams. Even when water seems to sit still, it is working. It redistributes heat. It dissolves gases. It ferries microscopic particles from one place to another. It carries information in the form of dissolved ions, tiny chemical messages exchanged between surface and air. Each leaf conducts thousands of these experiments every day, not in laboratories, but in light and shadow, in silence and patience. From above, a forest canopy may look uniform, but up close, every leaf tells a slightly different story. Different angles, different coatings, different relationships with water. Together, they create a mosaic of behaviors. Some leaves hold droplets longer, feeding mosses and microbes. Others send water downward quickly, ensuring it reaches roots and soil. Nothing is accidental, nothing is wasted. The droplet that arrived from the air has now been changed, its shape altered, its path redirected, its future rewritten by structures too small to name, but too powerful to ignore. The leaf does not consume the droplet, it collaborates with it. And as the droplet begins to move again, sliding toward a vein, stretching into a thinner form, it leaves behind more than moisture. It leaves energy redistributed, temperature adjusted, life briefly awakened. This is what a leaf does. Quietly, relentlessly, at a scale beyond our senses. A single leaf is not just a photosynthetic surface. It is a nano-engine, a climate moderator, a living interface between air and water, a laboratory that never closes. And as the droplet slips from the leaf's edge, drawn downward by gravity and design, its journey continues, no longer suspended, no longer hovering, but guided now toward veins, stems, and the hidden pathways below. What began in air and learned its first lessons on wax and ridge is ready to travel deeper into the body of the forest itself. The droplet does not rush downward. Before gravity claims it, before veins or stems call it inward, there is another pause, another way the forest learns to drink from the air. High above, where mountains soften into cloud, there are forests that awake not to rain, but to mist. Here, clouds do not hover overhead. They move through the trees. Fog slides slowly between trunks, thick enough to feel, thin enough to breathe. It wraps branches and needles, fills every hollow space, and settles into the quiet architecture of the canopy. Long before humans thought to stretch nets across ridges or build towers to catch moisture from passing clouds, forests were already harvesting fog. They had been doing it patiently, silently, for millions of years. In cloud forests, rain is a guest. Fog is the resident. Moist air rises from distant oceans and valleys, lifted by heat and terrain, until it cools and thickens into a moving veil. As this veil encounters trees, something subtle happens. Wind slows. The complex geometry of trunks, branches, and leaves breaks the fog's forward motion into countless gentle collisions. Air no longer flows freely. It eddies, it lingers, and in that slowing, water begins to appear. Fog is not made of drops falling from the sky. It is made of droplets forming where they drift, each one born from molecular encounters. Water vapor cooling, slowing, and gathering into clusters just large enough to hold together. When fog meets forest, these clusters find surfaces: needles, leaves, bark, moss. Each contact provides a place for droplets to grow, merging with others, becoming visible only when they are ready. The shape of leaves matters here. Needle-leaf trees, like pines and firs, excel at fog capture. Their narrow forms disturb airflow efficiently, creating turbulence that encourages condensation. Droplets collect along thin edges, where surface tension holds them until gravity gently pulls them downward. Broadleaf trees work differently. Their wide surfaces provide expansive landing zones, allowing fog to settle across entire plains. Droplets spread, merge, and flow slowly toward tips and veins. Neither strategy is better. Each belongs to its environment. Between these leaves, another quiet workforce waits. Mosses and lichens. They have no roots in soil, no access to groundwater, no patience for drought. They live entirely on what the air provides. Fog is their lifeline. Their surfaces are exquisitely tuned to absorb moisture directly. Water seeps into their cells without resistance, awakening metabolic processes that may have been dormant for days or weeks. When fog arrives, these organisms breathe, grow, and reproduce. When it leaves, they return to stillness, carrying memory of moisture in their tissues. In many cloud forests, the amount of water delivered by fog equals or even exceeds that from rainfall. This hidden input is called occult precipitation. Water that does not fall but arrives sideways, drifting, touching, collecting. Some forests survive almost entirely on this gift. In coastal deserts, on mountain ridges, and along steep slopes, trees may go months without meaningful rain, yet they remain green, anchored in soils that seem impossibly dry. Their secret is not underground, it is in the air. Fog supplies moisture gently and consistently, often daily. Its droplets are small, their impact soft, their delivery precise. They wet leaves without eroding soil, cool air without flooding roots, and provide water exactly where it can be used. Unlike rain, fog carries very little contamination. As droplets form from relatively clean atmospheric vapor, they are often purer than rainfall, which must pass through layers of dust, pollution, and aerosols. Fog water arrives filtered by time and motion, clean enough to be absorbed directly through leaf surfaces. Yes, some leaves drink through their skin. Not all moisture needs to travel through roots. In fog-rich environments, plants can absorb water directly through their cuticle and specialized surface cells. This bypasses soil entirely, allowing hydration even when groundwater is unavailable. The forest becomes inverted. Water flows from sky to leaf to stem, rather than from soil upward. And as droplets grow heavy enough to fall, they do so gently, trickling along branches and bark, delivering moisture to trunks and roots in measured amounts. Nothing rushes. Fog harvesting is not extraction, it is collaboration. The forest does not pull water from the air, it invites it to slow down. Every surface participates. Rough bark increases surface area. Curved leaves redirect flow. Moss cushions hold moisture longer than smooth surfaces ever could. Even the spacing of trees matters. Dense stands slow wind more effectively, increasing condensation rates. Open gaps allow fog to move through, preventing saturation and stagnation. This balance creates a living filtration system. As fog passes through the forest, it is stripped of water, cooled, and cleaned. Particles settle. Moisture is removed. Air emerges altered. The forest does not merely collect water, it processes atmosphere. What enters as cloud leaves as nourishment. For the droplet, this journey is quiet but transformative. It may begin as vapor far from land, condense into fog on a mountainside, touch moss before leaf, and then seep inward through living tissue. Or it may gather on a needle, slide downward, and join others in slow descent to the soil below. Every path is valid, every arrival useful. In this way, forests rewrite the meaning of precipitation. Water does not need to fall dramatically to sustain life. It can drift. It can brush past. It can arrive sideways, invisibly, faithfully. And as the droplet completes its time in fog, as it leaves the open air behind and commits to a surface, its role shifts once more. No longer a visitor, it becomes a participant. From here, the water will be guided deeper, along bark, into stems, towards hidden channels that carry it through the forest's interior. What began as mist is now ready to move with purpose. Downward, inward, into the quiet machinery of wood and vein, where another slow miracle waits. Whether the droplet arrived from mist, resting briefly on a leaf, or from darkness held deep within the soil, once it enters the body of the tree, it joins a single continuous column of water. From that moment on, its direction is no longer chosen by where it came from, but by the quiet forces that draw it upward. The droplet has left the open air behind. It no longer drifts or hesitates. It has crossed the quiet threshold, moving from surface into structure, from invitation into commitment. Inside the tree, there is no pump waiting, no heart to push, no muscle to squeeze. And yet the water begins to rise. Slowly at first, almost imperceptibly, it enters a network of passages so narrow they would disappear from sight entirely if held between two fingers. These passages are not pipes, they are vessels, xylem, built from once living cells, their walls thickened and shaped into long, hollow corridors, each one narrower than a human hair, some thinner still. Within them, water does something unexpected. It climbs, not in defiance of gravity, but in quiet conversation with it. At this scale, gravity is no longer absolute. Surface forces begin to matter more. Water molecules cling to one another, linked by hydrogen bonds. Soft attractions that form and reform endlessly, like hands brushing in the dark. They also cling to the walls of the vessel. Cellulose and lignin offer subtle charges, enough to pull water upward along their surfaces. This is capillary action, the same phenomenon that draws ink into paper, that lifts moisture through soil, that allows a candle wick to feed a flame. But in a tree, this effect is multiplied thousands of times. Each vessel supports the next. Each column of water is continuous, stretching unbroken from root to leaf. There are no gaps, no pauses, no air pockets, only tension. The water is not pushed, it is pulled. High above, in the leaves, water is constantly leaving, not in streams, but as vapor, slipping quietly into the air. As molecules depart, they tug on those below them, creating a gentle but persistent draw. This creates negative pressure inside the tree, not pressure that presses outward, but tension that holds inward, like a rope pulled tight. It is an astonishing state. The water inside a tall tree is under tension comparable to steel cables. And yet, the system does not collapse. The vessels do not implode. The columns do not snap. They hold. The architecture of wood is designed for this strain. Thickened walls resist collapse. Microscopic reinforcements distribute stress evenly. What looks like solid timber from the outside is within, a delicate balance of strength and flexibility. This is why trees can grow tens of meters tall without breaking their own plumbing. Each ring of growth adds resilience. Each year strengthens the structure. In forests, this system reaches its full expression. Wild trees grow in conversation with wind, with shade, with competition. Their vessels adapt accordingly, often narrower, more numerous, less vulnerable to failure. By contrast, many cultivated plants, grown in sheltered fields with abundant water, develop wider vessels. These allow faster flow, but at greater risk. A single bubble can interrupt the column, breaking the connection. Forest trees are patient. They favor reliability over speed. Water moves through them not as a rush, but as a steady ascent. Even movement matters. Trees are not still. They sway, almost imperceptibly, with wind and thermal shifts. This gentle motion helps maintain flow. Tiny vibrations discourage bubbles from forming, encourage water columns to remain continuous. The forest breathes in motion, and this movement does not stop at night. Even in darkness, when photosynthesis rests, water continues to travel. Slower, perhaps, but never fully still. Roots absorb moisture from deep soil layers. Water redistributes within the trunk. The tree prepares quietly for morning, filling reservoirs, equalizing pressure. There is no off switch. From the outside, a tree appears solid and inert, but inside, it is a dynamic hydraulic structure, a living tower of water held in tension. Each droplet passing upward carries with it dissolved minerals, traces of soil chemistry, messages from below. It moves cell by cell, vessel by vessel, toward the canopy where light waits. The journey can take hours, sometimes days, but it is continuous. At every moment, countless droplets are rising, balanced delicately between cohesion and release. This is not engineering imposed on nature. This is engineering grown. No blueprint was drawn, no calculation written. The system emerged through time, shaped by survival, refined by quiet success. A tree is not merely a structure that contains water. It is water, held temporarily in form. Wood is frozen flow. Growth rings are records of movement. Height is memory of ascent. And when you place your hand against a trunk, you are touching a column of water stretching from earth to sky, moving even now, even as you stand still. The droplet that once drifted as mist has joined this ascent. It is no longer alone, no longer free. It has become part of a collective effort, lifted not by force, but by connection. Upward it goes, guided by bonds too small to see, held by walls built to endure tension, rising through a structure that is neither machine nor monument, but something quieter. A living hydraulic architecture working without sound, without pause, without command. And as the droplet climbs higher, toward branches and leaves once more, it approaches another transformation. Soon, it will be asked to give itself back to the air, to cool, to lift energy skyward, to continue a cycle that never truly ends. But for now, it rises, slowly, surely, against gravity and in harmony with it, one vessel at a time. The droplet is no longer simply water. As it lingers on a leaf in fog, within a thin film of moisture suspended in air, it becomes something quieter and stranger, a place where chemistry wakes up. At this scale, the world behaves differently. A microdroplet is not just a smaller drop. It is a boundary, a meeting point between phases, where air and liquid touch so closely that rules begin to soften. Within a droplet small enough to rest on dust, on wax, on the invisible textures of a leaf, molecules crowd together. They have less room to wander, less time to drift apart. Reactions that would take minutes or hours in bulk water can unfold in seconds here. The droplet becomes a tiny laboratory, floating, resting, breathing. Carbon dioxide is always nearby. It drifts through the forest air, released from soil, from microbes, from respiration, from distant sources carried on wind. Much of it never reaches a leaf's interior. Instead, it meets water first. CO2 dissolves easily into microdroplets, far more easily than into large bodies of water. The surface area is immense compared to volume, and the boundary between air and liquid is thin, dynamic, alive with motion. As carbon dioxide enters a droplet, it reacts almost immediately with water molecules, forming carbonic acid, weak, fleeting, but influential. This changes everything. Inside the droplet, pH shifts, not dramatically, but enough to matter, enough to alter the behavior of nearby compounds, to change reaction rates, to influence how other gases dissolve or escape. And this happens not deep inside leaves, but right on their surfaces. The leaf becomes a stage for chemistry long before stomata open, long before carbon enters the classical pathways of photosynthesis. At the microdroplet scale, carbon is already being processed. Electrical charges play a subtle role here. Tiny imbalances form along the droplet's surface. Edges carry different charges than centers. Interfaces behave differently than interiors. These gradients encourage reactions that would otherwise struggle to begin. Molecules align, barriers lower. Energy redistributes itself quietly. In forests, where countless micro-droplets form each night and morning, this chemistry is constant. Fog, dew, and thin films of moisture become active zones where atmospheric carbon meets liquid water again and again. Some reactions release carbon back to the air, others temporarily bind it. Some transform it into forms that cling longer to surfaces, travel farther before release, or sink gently towards soil. Carbon's journey is not a straight path. It loops, it pauses, it detours. This is why forests absorb carbon even when photosynthesis slows. At dawn, before light strengthens, microdroplets already hold dissolved CO2. At dusk, after stomata begin to close, chemical exchanges continue at surfaces. Carbon does not wait politely for daylight. It interacts with water whenever conditions allow. Mist plays a particularly important role. Fog droplets remain suspended longer than rain. They move slowly, brush against leaves, bark, and moss, and exchange gases repeatedly before settling or evaporating. Each encounter is an opportunity for chemistry. Carbon in fog does not simply pass through a forest. It is filtered, delayed, transformed. Some of it binds temporarily to organic films on leaves. Some reacts with compounds produced by microbes living on the surface. Some becomes part of thin water layers that seep inward or slide downward. In this way, fog becomes a participant in the carbon cycle, not just a courier. Leaves themselves are not passive here. Their surfaces carry compounds. organic acids, waxes, trace minerals that influence micro-droplet chemistry. What dissolves, what reacts, what lingers depends on the leaf's unique makeup. Two leaves side by side can process carbon differently without ever opening a stoma. This layered approach gives forests resilience. Carbon is handled at multiple scales, through multiple pathways simultaneously. If one route slows, another continues. Some carbon enters leaves for photosynthesis. Some dissolves in water films and reacts at the surface. Some is carried downward by droplets, reaching bark, soil, or microbial communities. Each layer performs part of the work. Even evaporation matters. As microdroplets shrink, their chemistry intensifies. Solutes concentrate. Reaction rates increase. The final moments before a droplet disappears are often the most active. When the water vanishes, it leaves behind traces, salts, acids, organic residues that influence the next droplet to arrive. The surface remembers. Over time, these tiny interactions accumulate. They shape how much carbon remains near the forest, how much drifts away, and how much enters longer-term storage in soil or biomass. This is slow processing, but it never stops. Even on cloudy days, even at night, even when leaves rest. Carbon does not belong to a single mechanism. It is handled by the forest as a whole, by air, by water, by surfaces, by life too small to see. The droplet that once rose through xylem now finds itself part of this exchange again, not merely as a carrier, but as an active participant. It holds gases, it shifts charges, it enables reactions. It does work without intention. And when it finally evaporates, it does not leave empty-handed. It returns to the air carrying a slightly altered chemical story, one shaped by leaf, fog, and forest. This is why measuring forest carbon is so difficult. So much happens outside the obvious pathways. So much unfolds at scales smaller than instruments were designed to notice. Carbon does not only pass through pores. It lingers on surfaces. It dissolves in droplets. It reacts in moments that seem too brief to matter, but happen millions of times across a single canopy. The forest does not rush carbon, it slows it down. And in that slowing, in those countless micro-droplets shimmering at the edge of perception, carbon is guided gently, not trapped, not forced, but persuaded, handled in layers, processed in stages, shared among air, water, and life. By the time carbon leaves the forest atmosphere, it is no longer quite the same carbon that arrived. It has been touched by water, by leaves, by fog, by surfaces that exist solely to make the invisible manageable. And somewhere between night and morning, as droplets form and vanish again, the forest continues its quiet work, not loudly capturing carbon, but patiently negotiating with it, one microdroplet at a time. As the droplet reaches the leaf once more, its role begins to change. No longer rising, no longer reacting, it now waits at the edge of release. Inside the leaf, warmth gathers slowly, not heat as fire, but a gentle accumulation of solar energy, captured and shared cell by cell. This warmth does not stay. It is meant to travel. Water becomes its vehicle. From countless microscopic openings, too small to see, and too many to count. Water molecules slip quietly back into the air. One by one, they leave the liquid state behind, carrying energy with them as they rise. This is transpiration. Not evaporation from a puddle, not steam from boiling water, but a living exchange. Regulated, responsive, precise. As water changes phase, it absorbs heat. The leaf cools, the surrounding air softens. Temperature drops, often by several degrees, without a sound. Multiply this by millions of leaves, by billions of trees, and the forest becomes something extraordinary. A vast cooling system working continuously, powered by sunlight and patience. Where forests stand, air rarely overheats. Warmth is drawn upward and away, lifted invisibly by vapor, carried into the atmosphere where it can disperse. Step from an open field into dense woodland, and the difference is immediate. Light dims, air slows, heat loosens its grip. This is not shade alone. It is movement. Water vapor rising from leaves does not vanish at once. It travels. It holds energy within its bonds, transporting heat upward and outward, sometimes across vast distances. In this way, forests do not cool only themselves, they cool regions. As vapor ascends, it joins larger currents, forming invisible rivers in the sky. These aerial flows move moisture and energy from one place to another, often far beyond the forest's edge. Scientists call them flying rivers, but they are neither sudden nor forceful. They drift, guided by pressure gradients and terrain, shaped by the cumulative breath of leaves. In the Amazon, these airborne rivers carry immense volumes of water, so much that they rival the flow of terrestrial rivers below. Moisture lifted from one part of the forest travels thousands of kilometers, eventually cooling air, forming clouds, and releasing rain over distant lands. Rain that may fall on mountains, on farmland, on cities that never see the forest directly, yet depend on it completely. This cycle is delicate. Remove trees, and the system weakens. Less water rises. Less energy is carried away. Air warms more quickly. Clouds thin, and rain grows uncertain. Deforestation does not only remove shade, it dismantles cooling towers. Each tree is one. Inside its canopy, water rises, warms, and escapes, taking heat with it. This process repeats endlessly, day after day, season after season. A forest is not passive in climate. It actively shapes it. Temperature patterns change with leaf density. Humidity shifts with canopy structure. Even wind behavior is altered as transpiration-driven currents reshape the air above. The cooling effect extends beyond forest boundaries. Edges soften temperature extremes. Nighttime heat dissipates more quickly. Daytime highs remain lower. Where forests persist, climate becomes more forgiving. And this cooling does not stop at sunset. Though transpiration slows in darkness, it does not end. Water continues to move. Stored heat continues to be released gently, preventing rapid temperature swings. This stability matters. Plants, animals, and microbes are sensitive not only to heat, but to change. Forests moderate those changes, smoothing the sharp edges of weather. The droplet that evaporates from a leaf does not disappear into nothing. It becomes part of a larger pattern, joining countless others to form layers of humid air that influence pressure and flow. Energy, once concentrated at the leaf surface, is now distributed across the sky. In this way, forests act as buffers, absorbing solar energy and releasing it slowly, predictably, without violence. Remove the leaves, and energy has fewer places to go. Heat accumulates near the ground. Air becomes unstable. Weather grows erratic. This is why loss of forest often precedes loss of rain. Without sustained transpiration, flying rivers weaken. Cloud formation declines. Moisture no longer recycles efficiently. Dryness spreads, even to places far from the original clearing. Climate, it turns out, is written leaf by leaf. Each stomatal opening, each microscopic exit point contributes to a planetary pattern. The forest does not control weather, but it participates in it deeply. It slows warming. It encourages rain. It moves energy without noise. And it does so constantly, without rest, without instruction. The droplet, now vapor once more, rises gently, carrying with it a trace of forest coolness. It drifts upwards, joining currents shaped by millions of similar departures. Together, they form a quiet upward flow, not dramatic, not visible, but immensely powerful. This is how forests breathe, not in gasps, but in exhalations so steady they are easy to overlook. And yet the climate listens. Clouds gather where forests feed them. Rain falls where leaves have prepared the air. Dryness creeps in where transpiration has been silenced. The story of water is also a story of temperature, and temperature is a story written in vapor. As the droplet ascends, it becomes part of something vast, a cooling breath that connects canopy to sky, forest to continent, leaf to climate. And somewhere below, another droplet is already beginning its rise. The cycle does not pause. It only shifts form, quietly, faithfully, as long as leaves remain to carry it. Night settles gently over the forest. Above ground, movement slows, leaves rest, air cools, the sky grows quiet. But below the surface, another world awakens. In the darkness beneath roots and stones, water begins to move sideways, not pulled by leaves, not lifted by sunlight, but guided by difference, by contrast between wet and dry, between deep and shallow, between one root system and another. This is hydraulic redistribution. It happens without sound, without instruction, and mostly without notice. During the day, many trees draw water upward from the soil, feeding leaves, cooling air, sustaining growth. But at night, when transpiration slows, pressure within the root system changes. Roots that extend deep into moist layers remain in contact with water long after the surface has dried. Shallow roots, closer to air and heat, sit in soil that has lost much of its moisture. The tree senses this imbalance. Water flows from where it is abundant to where it is scarce, not upward, outward. Through roots, water moves laterally, seeping from deep roots into drier upper soil layers, quietly rehydrating spaces that would otherwise remain parched until rain. This is not waste, it is preparation. The tree is not watering the soil for itself alone. It is restoring balance to the system it depends on. The soil beneath a forest is never uniformly dry or wet. It is a patchwork, microsites of moisture and drought, created by roots, stones, organic matter, and history. Hydraulic redistribution smooths this patchwork. By releasing water at night, trees create pockets of moisture that benefit fine roots, microbes, and neighboring plants. Some of this water will be reclaimed the next day, some will not, and that is intentional. Roots do not operate in isolation. They touch, they overlap, they share space and signals in ways far more intimate than trunks ever could above ground. Water released by one tree's roots can be absorbed by another's. Not stolen, not competed for, shared. This is how forests survive long dry seasons without visible stress. Trees with deep roots act as reservoirs. They draw from groundwater unreachable by others and distribute a portion upward and outward, keeping the upper soil alive. Shallow-rooted plants, grasses, seedlings, understory species benefit quietly from this generosity. Even other trees may rely on it. This exchange is not governed by intention or altruism. It emerges from physics and connection. Water flows along gradients. Roots provide pathways. Networks make sharing inevitable. And beneath it all, another partner works tirelessly. Mycorrhizal fungi. Thread-like and vast, these fungal networks weave between roots, connecting individuals into communities. They extend the effective reach of roots, moving water and nutrients through filaments finer than hair. When water enters this network, it does not belong to a single plant. It becomes part of a collective circulation. Fungi facilitate redistribution, enhancing the movement of water from wet zones to dry ones, from strong trees to weaker ones, from established giants to fragile seedlings. Through these networks, the forest behaves less like a collection of individuals and more like a single organism. Older trees play a special role. With deep, extensive root systems, they tap stable water sources far below the reach of younger plants. At night, they release water upward, creating temporary reservoirs in surface soil. Seedlings depend on this moisture. So do microbes that maintain soil structure. So do fungi that support nutrient exchange. Remove the elders, and the system falters. This is why forests struggle after selective logging, even when many trees remain. The visible canopy may survive, but the underground heart is weakened. Hydraulic redistribution does not stop at tree boundaries. Water released into soil can persist long enough to influence evaporation rates, soil temperature, and microbial activity. Moist soil cools more slowly. It supports life longer. It resists erosion. In this way, redistribution stabilizes not only plants, but the entire forest floor. It is most active at night, when surface demand is low and internal pressures equalize. In darkness, roots become conduits of generosity. They reverse direction, not by command, but by physics. Water follows the easiest path, sometimes upward, sometimes sideways, sometimes outward into spaces that belong to no single plant. This movement can occur every night for weeks or months, sustaining forests through drought without a single drop of rain. The droplet, once lifted skyward and returned to earth, may now find itself traveling horizontally, sliding gently from one root system to another, crossing boundaries that do not exist below ground. It may nourish a tree that never touched the water source itself. It may linger in soil just long enough for a seed to germinate, for a microbe to activate, for a fungal thread to grow. This is community at the molecular level. No overseer, no hierarchy, only connection. The forest does not distribute water evenly. It distributes it intelligently. Moisture accumulates where it is needed most, guided by gradients of tension and resistance, by architecture refined over millennia. Roots are not just anchors. They are sensors, balancers, and quiet hearts. They feel dryness before leaves do. They respond before stress becomes visible. They prepare the system for tomorrow while the forest sleeps. And so, beneath the silence of night, water moves. From deep to shallow, from strong to vulnerable, from abundance to need. The forest breathes downward. By morning, when sunlight returns and transpiration resumes, surface soil holds just enough moisture to support another day. Leaves will rise, water will climb, energy will move skyward, and beneath it all, the redistribution will wait, ready to begin again as soon as darkness falls. The droplet, now shared among many, no longer belongs to one path or one plant. It is part of a hidden circulation, a quiet agreement written in water and root, a reminder that forests survive not through competition alone, but through cooperation made inevitable by connection. Below ground, where no one is watching, the forest takes care of itself. The droplet arrives at the soil quietly. There is no splash, no sharp sound of impact, only a soft surrender as water meets earth. From above, soil can look still, granular, finished, a surface to be walked on, dug into, or brushed away. But the moment water enters, that illusion dissolves. Soil is not a thing, it is a process. Beneath the forest floor, nothing is dormant. Particles shift, pores open, networks awaken. Water does not fall into emptiness. It enters a crowded world. At the smallest scales, soil holds water not in pools, but in films. Thin, continuous layers clinging to mineral surfaces with a persistence stronger than gravity. Clay particles are especially skilled at this. Flat and charged, they attract water molecules and hold them tightly, forming layers only a few molecules thick. These films do not drain. They remain even when the soil looks dry to the eye. This is nanoscale storage. Here, water is neither liquid nor vapor, but something in between, bound yet mobile enough to move information. The droplet spreads into these films, stretching itself across countless surfaces, becoming many instead of one. And in doing so, it brings the soil to life. Bacteria wake first. Invisible to the eye, they have been waiting in stillness. Metabolism slowed, signals muted. Water changes everything. Thin films connect isolated pockets, allowing cells to sense one another, to exchange chemicals, to move. Bacteria do not swim freely through soil. They travel along water films, sliding gently across mineral grains, guided by gradients of moisture and nutrients. Movement resumes. Around them, biofilms begin to form. These are not random coatings. They are living architectures, slimy, elastic matrices built from sugars and proteins, anchored to soil particles and infused with water. Within biofilms, microbes find shelter. They share resources, protect one another from drying, and create localized environments where chemistry unfolds differently than in the surrounding soil. The droplet is now part of this structure. It carries dissolved minerals, trace organic compounds, and gases from above. It delivers messages, chemical signals that announce arrival, that indicate conditions have changed. Water is not just a solvent here. It is a medium of communication. Signals diffuse through films, gradients form, responses ripple outward. Fungi feel it too. Thread-like hyphae, already woven through the soil, absorb moisture along their length. They swell slightly, increasing contact with surrounding particles, enhancing their ability to transport nutrients and water. The soil breathes. As pores fill with water, air is displaced, moving slowly upward through channels. Gases exchange with the surface. Carbon dioxide escapes. Oxygen enters. This breathing is subtle but constant. It keeps roots alive. It feeds microbes. It maintains balance. In forest soil, this exchange is finely tuned. Organic matter creates structure. Roots create pathways. Worms and insects carve corridors that guide air and water together. By contrast, bare soil behaves differently. Without roots, without organic glue, water rushes through large pores, leaving behind dryness and collapse. Microbial life struggles to persist. Signals fail to travel far. Forest soil remembers water. Open ground forgets. This memory is chemical as well as physical. When water enters forest soil, it dissolves compounds left behind by plants and microbes, organic acids, nutrients, signaling molecules. These are not evenly distributed. They form gradients that guide growth and behavior. Roots grow toward moisture. Microbes gather where resources concentrate. Fungi extend towards zones of activity. Life follows water, and water in turn is shaped by life. As microbes metabolize, they alter pH, change surface charges, and influence how tightly water binds to soil particles. Each reaction feeds back into the system. The droplet is no longer identifiable. It has been partitioned, absorbed, exchanged, but its presence is unmistakable. It is carried in scent, the familiar smell that rises after rain, earthy, grounding, almost sweet, is not soil itself, but a compound released by bacteria when water returns. Geosmin. It signals abundance. It announces that microbial communities are active again. To animals and humans alike, it whispers that the system is alive. The forest floor is never silent. Every wetting event triggers a cascade, chemical, biological, physical, that rebuilds relationships and restores function. Even small amounts of water matter. A single droplet can connect previously isolated zones, allowing reactions that were impossible moments before. It can revive dormant microbes, trigger enzyme activity, and shift nutrient availability. In this way, each droplet carries potential far greater than its size. The forest truly lives from the ground up. Roots depend on microbial partners to unlock nutrients. Microbes depend on water films to survive and communicate. Fungi depend on stable moisture to maintain their networks. Remove the water and the system fragments. But when water returns, even briefly, integration resumes. The soil does not need to be flooded. It needs to be connected. Forest soils excel at this. Their structure holds water gently, releasing it slowly, maintaining continuity even during dry periods. Nano-scale films persist, sustaining life when larger pools vanish. This is resilience built over time. The droplet that once drifted through air, that rested on leaves, that climbed through wood, is now part of something quieter and deeper. It is no longer moving toward light or sky. It is holding space. It stabilizes temperature. It moderates chemistry. It supports communities that will never be seen directly, yet make all other life possible. When the sun rises again, some of this water will be drawn upward. Some will remain. Some will evaporate slowly from the surface. But none of it is wasted. Each molecule has played a role, as solvent, as signal, as shelter. In forest soil, water is never idle. It is always becoming something else. And beneath every step you take, beneath every root and fallen leaf, this transformation continues. Patient, persistent, and essential. The forest does not stand on soil. It grows from it, quietly, from the bottom up, one living droplet at a time. The droplet rises again, not as it was before, not as a simple return. It leaves the forest slowly, lifting from leaves, from soil films, from bark warmed by passing light. Each molecule slips free, quietly detaching from surfaces that shaped it, changed it, taught it how to behave. What rises is not the same water that fell. It carries memory. Not memory in thought, but in structure, in ratios, in subtle differences etched into the molecule itself. As water evaporates from a forest, it carries with it a biological signature. Not all water vapor is the same. The proportions of its isotopes, slightly heavier or lighter versions of hydrogen and oxygen, shift depending on how and where that water last touched the earth. Water lifted gently from leaves differs from water torn from open ground. Water that lingered in soil films is not identical to water that rushed off bare surfaces. The forest leaves its fingerprint. These isotopic differences are faint, but they persist. They travel with the vapor, quietly marking its origin. High above the canopy, this vapor gathers, not immediately into clouds, but into layers, thin, humid strata suspended in the sky. The atmosphere here behaves like a vast, inverted ocean. Water does not fall through it at once. It floats, mixes, circulates. The forest feeds this ocean continuously. As more vapor rises, air cools, pressure shifts, and invisible boundaries form. Within them, water molecules begin to cluster again. Clouds are born. Not all clouds come from distant seas. Many form directly above forests, their substance lifted from leaves and soil below. In regions of dense vegetation, this process becomes self-reinforcing. Moist air rising from the forest encourages condensation, which in turn stabilizes atmospheric conditions that favor further moisture retention. The forest makes the sky receptive. Over time, this leads to something remarkable. Rain that falls over forests often originates there as well. Water lifted by transpiration returns as precipitation, sometimes nearby, sometimes far away, but always altered by its journey. This is a closed loop. but not a repetition. Each cycle reshapes the next. As vapor condenses, the isotopic fingerprints influence where and when rain falls. Heavier molecules condense sooner. Lighter ones travel farther. This means that rain carries information about its path. It remembers where it came from, not as a story, but as a pattern embedded in its composition. Scientists can read this memory. By analyzing isotopes in rainfall, they trace vapor back to forests, to soil moisture, to transpiration from specific ecosystems. Rain remembers leaves, and forests depend on this memory. In large intact systems like the Amazon, this recycling is immense. Moisture evaporated in one region can return as rain hundreds or thousands of kilometers away, feeding rivers, cooling air, sustaining forests that have never met the original trees. This is the larger loop. But there is also a smaller one. Locally, forests create their own rain. Moisture rises during the day, gathers overhead, and returns as afternoon showers or evening mist. Remove the forest, and this loop weakens. Less vapor rises, clouds thin, rain becomes irregular, dry seasons lengthen. The water cycle remains, but its character changes. This is why deforestation often leads to drought, even when oceans remain full. The missing element is not water itself, but the way it moves. Forests do not simply intercept rainfall. They choreograph it. They decide how long water stays near the ground, how much energy it carries upward, and how evenly it is redistributed. The droplet that once lingered on waxy leaf surfaces, that climbed through wood, that rested in soil films, now floats freely again. But it is not anonymous. It carries dissolved gases from soil respiration. It holds traces of organic compounds. Its isotopic balance reflects its time underground, its pause on leaves, its slow release into air. In this way, each droplet contributes to the character of the atmosphere. The sky above forests is different from the sky above bare land. It holds more moisture, more stability, more potential for rain. Weather patterns respond. Winds adjust, clouds linger longer, temperature extremes soften. The forest writes these changes quietly, through repetition rather than force. Over time, entire climates emerge from these small decisions. The water cycle, often drawn as a simple loop, is in reality a layered system. Many loops nested within one another, interacting, overlapping, sometimes amplifying, sometimes buffering. The forest participates in all of them. Local transpiration feeds local clouds. Regional vapor flows feed distant rainfall. Global circulation integrates countless forest contributions into planetary patterns. And through it all, water is never the same twice. It returns, but altered. It remembers, not because it must, but because it cannot forget the interactions that shaped it along the way. Every surface leaves a trace. Every pause changes composition. Every transformation adds nuance. This is why water from forest rain differs from water condensed over deserts. Why storms carry signatures of landscapes passed over. Why the atmosphere is not uniform, but textured with history. The droplet, now part of a cloud, may fall tonight or next week. It may return to the same forest or land far beyond it. Wherever it falls, it brings with it the influence of trees, that may never be seen again. This is the quiet power of forests. They do not command weather, they inform it. They do not force rain, they invite it. Through countless small exchanges, through vapor rising leaf by leaf, they shape the behavior of the sky itself. The atmosphere listens. It responds to what forests offer: moisture, energy, structure, memory. And so the cycle continues, closed but never repeating, familiar yet always new. Water returns to the air, but it carries the forest with it, in its chemistry, in its motion, in its timing. The forest has written another line into the weather of the world. Quietly, patiently, one remembered droplet at a time. The cycle does not end in the forest. It passes quietly through you. As you listen, as your breathing slows, as your body rests, water is moving within you in ways not so different from the trees you have followed all this time. You are not outside this system. You never were. Your body is shaped by the same physics, the same quiet forces that lift water through trunks and guide droplets across leaves. Inside you, water climbs without pumps. In the narrow spaces between cells, along microscopic channels woven through tissue, liquid rises and falls through capillary action, the same gentle pull that carries water upward in plants. Blood moves through vessels thinner than a hair. Fluids spread through membranes, not pushed by strength, but drawn by attraction. You are, in part, a living column of water held in balance. Your lungs resemble forests turned inside out. Instead of leaves opening to the sky, you have branching airways opening inward, multiplying surface area until air and blood meet across impossibly thin boundaries. Oxygen enters, carbon dioxide leaves. Moisture is exchanged with every breath. Each exhale carries water vapor. Each inhale receives it. This is transpiration in another form. Your skin participates as well. Even now, a thin veil of moisture rests upon it, evaporating slowly, cooling you without your awareness. You exchange water with the air constantly, through pores too small to notice, maintaining balance without conscious effort. You sweat when heat rises. You cool as water leaves. The same logic that allows forests to regulate climate keeps your internal temperature steady through changing conditions. You are not separate from the water cycle. You are one expression of it. And yet the spaces we build often forget this. Cities harden surfaces. They smooth textures. They accelerate airflow and strip away the micro-scale pauses that water needs to linger. Concrete sheds moisture quickly. Glass offers no grip for droplets. Metal heats and dries the air above it. In these environments, nano-scale interactions vanish. Water is forced to behave abruptly, either rushing away or evaporating too fast to matter. The subtle exchanges that forests depend on are interrupted. Rain falls harder, heat builds faster, air dries unevenly. The invisible infrastructure of water is broken, but humans are beginning to remember. Architects study leaves not for their beauty alone, but for their function. They examine how surfaces guide droplets, how textures slow wind, how form encourages cooling without machines. Buildings are designed to breathe. Walls are shaped to hold moisture briefly. Materials are chosen for how they interact with air and water, not just for strength or appearance. Some structures now harvest fog, their surfaces patterned after needles, bark, or beetle shells. They catch drifting moisture from passing clouds, condense it gently, and guide it into storage. What forests perfected over millions of years is being rediscovered in steel and stone. These technologies do not create water, they listen for it. They slow the air, they offer surfaces, they invite droplets to pause. This is not innovation, it is imitation. The most successful designs do not fight the water cycle, they cooperate with it. Because when forests are removed, something essential disappears. Not just trees, but pathways. Invisible rivers collapse, microclimates flatten, the sky loses a collaborator. Rain becomes unpredictable, heat lingers longer, drought spreads beyond cleared land into places that never touched an axe. The loss of forest is the loss of continuity. Water can still fall from clouds, but it no longer knows where to linger. It no longer finds the surfaces that guide it gently through air, leaf, soil, and root. Protecting forests is not only about preserving scenery or species. It is about keeping the water cycle legible. It is about ensuring that moisture can move slowly, intelligently, through landscapes that know how to receive it. Every forest conserved is a promise kept between earth and sky, and every breath you take is evidence of that promise. The air entering your lungs tonight carries water that once touched leaves. It may have risen from distant canopies, drifted across continents, and condensed again only recently. You inhale forest water daily, even if you live far from trees. Your breath closes a loop. Carbon leaves your body. Water follows. Energy shifts. Some of that vapor will return as rain. Some will cool another place. Some will join clouds shaped by forests you'll never see. Every exhale is a contribution. Every inhale is a return. This is why the story you have followed is not about trees alone. It is about connection, about how small, patient processes scale into systems that sustain climates, bodies, and futures. The forest does not exist apart from you. It extends into your physiology, your cities, your weather, and you extend into it. Through breath, through water, through cycles that do not end, only transform. As you rest now, your body continues its own quiet exchanges. Water rises and falls. Heat is carried away. Balance is maintained. You are participating even in sleep. Each slow breath is another turn of the cycle. Not dramatic, not loud, just steady, faithful. A reminder that the world continues not because of force, but because of countless gentle movements that know how to return. One breath at a time. The night has grown quiet again. Somewhere in the forest, the same droplet we first noticed at the beginning rests once more as dew, balanced on the edge of a leaf, holding the soft reflection of moonlight. It has traveled far without ever leaving home. It rose from air, lingered on wax and vein, slid through wood, shared itself in soil, lifted heat into the sky, and returned again, not as loss, but as change. Nothing disappeared, nothing was wasted. The droplet only learned new ways to be. As it rests now, the forest breathes slowly around it. Leaves tremble almost imperceptibly, responding to air too gentle to feel. Mist thins, then reforms, as temperatures shift by fractions of a degree. This is the rhythm that never stops. Even now, As your body grows heavier, as thoughts loosen their grip, you are breathing with the forest. Each inhale carries moisture shaped by leaves. Each exhale returns water to the air, continuing a cycle that does not need your attention to go on. While you sleep, water will keep moving. Roots will share in the dark. Soil will whisper with life. Vapor will rise. Clouds will gather. And the forest will quietly write tomorrow's weather. You do not have to follow it anymore. The journey is complete. The circle is whole. Let the image soften now. Dew dissolving gently into air, a leaf settling back into stillness, the forest breathing in the dark. There is nothing left to do, only rest. Good night.